If your finances in the household are not right, your household splits up. And I have too many family members where either deaths happen or divorces, just too much chaotic situations that the finances what was the root cause of why everything split up.
There is a new American dream. One that doesn't involve working till you're 65 before you start enjoying life. If you're someone looking for ways to regain control over your time and check off that bucket list now, you're in the right place. We share tips from experts on investing, personal finance, and mindset so that you can finally have the freedom to work less and live more. This is the Freedom Investing Podcast with your host, Kris Toribio.
What's going on, everyone? This is Kris Toribio from the Freedom Investing Podcast, and I am so excited you're here to join us for another amazing episode. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the show. Please make sure to hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date with our latest episodes. Moving on to today's guest, we have Ray Woods. Ray's an engineer and real estate investor out of the Atlanta market. He has been in residential real estate for 3 years and is now converting over to the multifamily space. He has over 7 years in the engineering field and currently has closed multiple residential deals and owns an Airbnb near the Mercedes Dome. Ray, welcome to the show, man. Before we dive into it, give us a quick 2-minute rundown of who you are, your background, and where you are in your journey to achieving time freedom.
Yeah, man. First of all, Kris, I appreciate you for having me on the podcast here. Again, my name is Ray. I'm originally from Mississippi, down a small town called Catahoula, Mississippi, which nobody knows where that's at. And I went to school at Ole Miss for mechanical engineering, ended up moving out to Atlanta where I got into real estate around 2016-ish or so. I started in real estate. I was in and out of residential real estate doing wholesaling, ended up coming back 2019, 2020, closed a bunch of deals, started understanding how to budget my finances and get some cash flow. And, you know, it's still a journey at this point as far as acquiring more properties.
That's awesome, man. And I know we had the opportunity to meet over at our conference that we held last month, which was awesome. We talked briefly about this and that you were down in Mississippi and no one really knew exactly where it was, that city was. But what was fascinating to me was that you took a dive from being an engineer and then you jumped into real estate investing. How did that even get started? Was it from a personal finance standpoint, or what triggered you to start investing in real estate?
So I was interested in real estate around 2015, I want to say, 2014, 2015. And that's when I stayed in Alabama. I stayed in Florence, Alabama, which is another country area like Mississippi. And at least they had some stoplights there. But in Alabama, I started studying real estate actually from a Fortune Builders course. So I was studying, I had purchased a wholesale course from Fortune Builders and started learning to see how this type of game is. My reason of choosing real estate was solely because that's what I saw that was actually building the most wealth. And I had a random guy that I talked on the phone for like 4 hours. I never even met him, but somebody connected me with him. And we was talking. He was changing. He said, you need to learn this. You need to research this. And I started digging and digging. I came across Rich Dad Poor Dad. It geared me to real estate. And I started learning more about that. And I've just been going with that ever since.
So you started out with the Fortune Builders course. You met someone who kind of really pushed you to start exploring the different options here with real estate. You went from wholesaling to purchasing residential properties, and now you're jumping to the commercial space. Can you kind of describe a little bit of how you've made that transition throughout the course of your journey?
Yeah, so the first couple deals that I closed, crazy, when I started in 2016, I had about 4 or 5 deals that fell through. And I was actually unemployed at the time, and I was trying to make some money and did not want to go back to work. And so what ended up happening was I eventually had to go take a job, and I took a break from it. I came back and I just started closing deals left and right. I closed like 4 or 5 deals within 6 months, just back to back to back. And the first deal, I didn't really manage the money properly because I was excited. The second deal, I started understanding like, hey, you need to take some of this money, put it back into the business, keep it growing. And I did that also with the third and fourth deal. Once I got to the fourth or fifth deal, I was like, you know what? Instead of just flipping this money out, let me go ahead and look for something that's going to cash flow, which I eventually got into Airbnb. And for Airbnb, I did arbitrage with a property that we have now out in near the Mercedes Dome in Atlanta, and I started to understand more how to budget money, how to finance, how to leverage good debt to bring in that cash flow. So once I started understanding that realm, then I started looking at the commercial side and was like, hey, in order for me to scale up, especially in the market right now, it's a little difficult with the residential market. So I decided, let me go ahead and convert over to the commercial and start learning the ropes on this end as well, so I can scale up faster.
Wow, that was a ton of really good insight. And I really want to unpack that a lot there because that kind of describes the journey that a lot of people end up making, right? When you first start out, you have one of three things, right? You have experience, you have time, or you have money. In your
Mm.
case, you had some time and you had some money, and you had some time more than anything, right? You didn't have
Right,
a job at
exactly.
the
When I first
time.
started, yeah.
Yeah. And so wholesaling was the strategy that made the most sense at the time, correct?
Yeah, great. And that was in wholesaling, actually, it was I kind of had a glimpse of what it was to have some type of freedom because I didn't have to worry about waking up and going to the 9 to 5, which I still work a 9 to 5 now. But back then, it was a lot of stress, unnecessary stress that I shouldn't have had because I had to worry about what was going on with the financial situation of the house. Am I making enough money to take care of the bills? And the wholesaling it just made the most sense because that was the quickest way to get some money. And I learned a ton within just a few years, like a ton that most won't even learn within 10 years. So it was crazy.
That's one thing I think a lot of people need to understand is that when it comes to the different strategies, there's a ton of different ways you can be successful when it comes to investing in real estate. There's a ton of different niches. You can do wholesaling, you can do fix and flip, you can do buy and hold, you can do BRRRR, you can do a bunch of different things and a bunch of different asset classes within real estate as well. And you have to respect that it does take a lot of time and a lot of learning experiences to be successful in each and every one of those niches, right?
Yep.
So you learn the whole ins and outs of wholesaling, right? And then you mentioned that you went into Airbnb arbitrage. Can you
Hmm.
kind of explain to our listeners what Airbnb arbitrage is? Because it's really an interesting concept.
Yeah. So in a short sense, Airbnb arbitrage is basically you negotiate with the seller. If they're looking to rent their property, you're actually going to be like a manager for them for that property. And you tell them, hey, I have some professional clients that I want to rent out to throughout your months, and we want to rent out your property to those individual clients. And once you negotiate on some terms and agree on a few things, then now you're actually renting the property from that person. They know that you're putting it on Airbnb and you're able to rent it out to these individuals that you stated, and you get the cash flow that way. You make sure that their mortgage is paid or the rent is paid that you agreed on, and then everything else after that, you're getting the profits from that point. And it's just a matter of you managing it or having a team to manage it, which would be the more ideal thing is to have a team to do that because it is difficult to do it by yourself. So having a team in place is very important. And the pro and con I see between the two is if you're doing an arbitrage, the benefit you don't have is to refinance the property. So if you don't own the property, the seller still owns the property. You're just managing it for them. You get the cash flow. You don't get the benefit of refinance. If you own it, which would not be arbitrage, that's when you can refinance. But then you also have some risk because you have the house as a liability on your books. So
Very nice breakdown there. And for people who are looking to get started and they're not necessarily in a position where they can purchase their first rental property, but they are looking for a way to generate cash flow, you're right. Even though you don't get the chance to benefit from the loan pay down, the equity buildup, the appreciation, tax benefits, you do have an opportunity to generate some cash flow by
mhm.
renting out a property that someone else owns. And by renting it through Airbnb, the margins there are a little bit bigger because one, you don't have the mortgage as you were saying, but
Mhm.
two, it just tends to be a little bit higher priced when you rent it via short term than you would a long term rental. So that's awesome. So
Right.
you were doing this. Were you still wholesaling at the time as well?
Even now, I'm still currently wholesaling. We still looking for deals, looking for land to build on, looking for properties to renovate on the residential side, as well as looking for deals on the commercial side. But yeah, still currently doing that. So,
Gotcha. That's awesome. And so, what markets are you currently focused on right now?
so right now, the Atlanta market, I want to say we had to kind of change our strategy up a little bit, and we thinking about going a little further out, or maybe even go towards other states. But Atlanta is the primary focus market for now.
And is this currently where your current properties that you own are in as well? Is it in the Atlanta market?
Yes, correct. And what I learned is stay in your backyard. Look in your own backyard. Once you have enough systems and stuff in place, then you can kind of go out and about. Because for Airbnb, there's a team put together to manage that. For the wholesale operations, we have a team that's doing that. We got people that's cold calling. We got the VA in place for that. Outside of that, once you have all of that system solidified, then start looking at going outside markets. If you have a team outside the states that is looking to do stuff out there and they have something, then yeah, work with them and see how you can kind of benefit and play on their team as well. But you don't want to get too far out to where you spread yourself too thin.
That's a really good point there. And a lot of people talk about what is your competitive advantage, right? And being able to invest in your backyard, even if on high level, on paper, it's not the ideal market to invest in. In your case, it actually is a great market. Atlanta is a great market to invest in. But for instance, in the case for us, we're in Chicago. A lot of people take a look at Chicago from an outside perspective and say, look, we have net migration outside of Chicagoland market. You have crime, you have a lot of political barriers that you're going to have to overcome in order to be successful when it comes to investing in this area. But
Right.
for those who are here and can understand the nuances when it comes to navigating with permits and working with the city, working with tenants and things of that sort, that is just one extra barrier that an outside investor may not be willing to take the risk on. And so you can still be very successful by investing in your backyard. Has that kind of been the experience that you've had as well?
Yeah, exactly. And if something was to go wrong with a property, you want to be able to at least be able to drive to it and see what's going on. It's very difficult if you got to go. For example, somebody sent me a property that was out in it was in Savannah, and Savannah is a nice area, and it's definitely a nice city to invest in. But Savannah is 4 or 5 hours away. Now, Atlanta traffic, 10 miles is an hour. So you can get to another state within an hour in a sense. But, within an hour or two is I would say a good distance to stay within your backyard for the properties that you own.
Gotcha. So when you made this transition, you were doing Airbnb arbitrage, you're wholesaling, you still continue to wholesale to this day, but you eventually made some sort of leap into purchasing your first rental property. What was the transition there, and how did you kind of position yourself to be able to do so?
So it wasn't so much of a rental property going through the BRRRR strategy. It was just the Airbnb. So we just have the arbitrage property with that seller, and we still looking for some more properties to do the same with. So we looking for properties to buy and keep ourselves, so then we can reap the benefits of the refinance. But we did leverage OPM, other people's money, whenever I took that money and I invested into the Airbnb to furnish it, to get it on the market, and then use this to start cash flowing. And the first month was negative, which is what people don't like to talk about. They like to bring all the good things there. But the first month was negative, and we had maybe one other month that was lower. But every other month outside of that, we generated positive. We was able to take care of the expenses and still be pushing forward to this day. I mean, we just filled up this month too as well. And we recently had an inquiry for next month to book the whole month. So that's all too. So.
That's great. And when it comes to developing the systems, I know that, when it comes to Airbnb, it can be a very hands-on business to run, right? You have your constant tenant turnovers, and you also have the cleaning that you're going to have to manage, as well as the bookings, right? You're going to have to, when people make a booking on your Airbnb, you're going to have to kind of give them instructions on how to get into the property, how to take care of it, things of that sort. So what kind of systems did you put in place to make it so that way you can be as hands-off as possible?
So this is more so of meeting and networking with people. So meeting and going out there, talking to different people. My partner, Errol Allen, who is also the manager of my Airbnb, over his period of time, he has acquired this type of team and these systems together. So cleaners, you go out and talk to different cleaners, see how they operate, interior designs that actually put the property together to be staged, on top of him being a super host for the platform. So that helps a huge ton as well. And then also making sure that we have a lot of different wording templates that can be sent out automatically. So for example, if somebody was to book a day and soon as they check in, there's an automated message that goes out and says, hey, we just want to make sure that you read this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the things that are listed. And we have an individual also on the side that will message individuals if they have issues at the property. So it's just a matter of getting those people together. And I typically like to say I'm strategically lazy. I don't want to do anything. And so instead of me going to try to create something from scratch, I'm going to find somebody else that potentially has those systems already and just work with them. As I work with them, I learn what they do. So I understand the systems. That's my engineering mind. And then if I decide I want to go my route and get my own systems in place, then I'll do that.
That's awesome. Have you ever read the book Who Not How?
Somebody recommended it to me. I have not. I've been on the show, but I have not read it yet.
That is a great book. And like what you did right there is exactly the concept that they were saying, right? And when it comes to doing things, achieving things in your business, a lot of people try and focus on the how. How do I do this? How do I scale? How do I make this more passive? How do I develop these systems? But in your case, you found someone who already had those systems in place. You found a who to achieve the how. And
Right.
That's a powerful concept because when it comes to taking control over your time, you don't have to spend all the time being an expert in that field. You want to be a real estate investor. You don't necessarily want to be a property manager. You don't want to be an Airbnb manager, whatever it may be. So instead, you can leverage the expertise of someone else who, very truthfully, could probably do it better than you do. And being able to leverage their expertise to be successful in your business so you can focus on what you're really good at, which is finding more deals, finding more properties, things of that sort.
Exactly. Stay on the sales side and let them manage everything else in-house. So
that's awesome. And so I'm guessing, do they use like a VA when it comes to managing the reservations and things of that sort?
Yes, correct. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So you're going through Airbnb, you're doing wholesaling, and now you also have interest in investing in commercial real estate as well. What was the transition into that space, and what kind of triggered your interest in it?
So I watched a lot of Grant Cardone.
Mr. 10X.
Yeah, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to meet him, his wife, his brother, and his daughters. They all are great individuals. I met them at one of the Growth Cons. I think it was Growth Con 2 in Florida, I want to say. And I watched Grant for at least 2 years prior to going to that. And seeing multifamily and how I operated made sense. And I think the number one thing that pulled me towards multifamily was that the properties are valued different. And when you look at residential, a property is valued by what house is sold within a half a mile radius within 6 months. Now people are even doing quarter mile radius and less months than that because the market's so chaotic. But then when you look at multifamily, the property value is based on what is generating. So actually, and it's kind of like a business. You value a business on what type of revenue that it's bringing in, and then you decide what the purchase price of the property is. Not only that, the property is a good hedge against inflation because everybody needs some place to stay. Regardless if everything goes to crap, people still need a place to stay. People are not going to be sleeping on the streets. So that's kind of what pulled me to multifamily space. Like, you know what? I think I'm going to go and learn more about this side. And because I do financial stuff within my engineering world, some of that still applies over to the underwriting side. And that's primarily what I do for my team within the GOB network, Goya 7 Capital. I primarily focus on underwriting the property. So I underwrite the properties. I'll go see the property in person out here in Atlanta. And it's an exciting thing to be able to see this many units and be able to scale up faster when you're doing 100 units, 200 units, and you can see how much money that these properties are generating. And you understand that, okay, this is going to be a right value. I could probably work a deal better than I could in a residential space.
That's really important. And the cool thing is too, is having this experience of wholesaling, of course you have these systems in place to generate off-market leads, working with potential sellers, things of that sort. That concept can still apply when it comes to taking down a commercial commercial property as well. So that's another competitive advantage that you have going into this.
Yeah, wholesaling, I can probably do that in my dreams at this point with understanding doing that for so many years. And even the multifamily, I'm getting better with that. Like I kind of toot my own horn here, but yesterday somebody sent me a deal and I immediately was like, I like underwrote it within my mind, looking at it, looking at the financials. And I'm like, yeah, that's just not going to work. And then I look back at it, I was like, let me just double check that. And I sat down and I actually went through the numbers and I was like within a 2% range of what I stated. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know my brain operated like that, but I'll take it.
Wow, that's impressive. So do you think that just came down to putting in the time to do the repetitions up front? Like, were you underwriting a ton of deals when you were first getting started and you got that kind of sense?
Yeah. And I've probably been at multifamily for maybe 2.5, close to 3 months, I want to say. And I've probably underwritten, I don't know, 10 to 15 different properties. And it's very time consuming if the financials that you're given are not as organized as you would like it to be, which I've come across a few mom and pops where stuff is just all over the place and you pretty much have to become a whole financial engineer and put everything together and see how the numbers work with that. And so as I'm doing that, I see different individuals, how their mind works, how they organize stuff. And then once you do that over and over again, it becomes easier just throughout time. So, and then I take courses and I still learn and read and get information from other individuals that are actually better than me at underwriting. So then I can take what they have and then apply it to what I do on my side.
That's great advice. That's great advice, man. All right, folks. So we are coming towards the end of today's show, but before we finish, it is time for the Freedom 5. These are 5 questions that we ask every guest on our show, starting with the most important question. What is your why? What is the underlying motivation behind everything it is that you do?
My why, I would say I was raised in a household that we didn't have financial education. It was like a sin to talk about finances in the house. And nobody understood money. They didn't understand credit. You didn't understand investing, nothing. People, of course, was living paycheck to paycheck in the household. Even people I grew up around was living the same exact life. So I was kind of stuck in a bubble of people just not having no type of education toward their finances at all. And I decided not to go that route and be the one to learn and get out of that box and start learning more about the finances. And then I go through and educate people like through my YouTube channel, through my experience, and show other people how to do personal finance budgeting and so many things. Because finance, if your finances in the household are not right, your household splits up. And I have too many family members where either deaths happen or divorces, just too much chaotic situations that the finances what was the root cause of why everything split up. And in our household, it doesn't fly. I don't care if it hurts your feelings. I don't care if you're crying in the corner. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk about these finances and we're going to see what we need to do to fix it if something's messed up.
I love that. And a lot of times people would prefer to pretend like it's not an issue or pretend like it's not something that they need to talk about. And you are actually giving yourself control over your life by saying, look, this is not something that we're going to brush aside. We need to talk about this so that way we understand where we are and where we want to go. And that's powerful.
Right.
Number 2, what book has had the largest influence on your life?
At first it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is kind of the cliche book. But I want to say this book here is called Salary Rich and Retirement Poor. It's by Kimberly Jones. And he's actually a retired veteran as well as he's a pretty high level corporate executive for the CDC and actually is a speaker for SHRM. And I say his book because it gives a different insight about understanding your finances versus other people who just take people's information and then regurgitate it back on social media because it's easier that way. So he has his own unique strategies as far as understanding how to budget, how to deal with your finances, how to invest properly at whatever age you're at. And he's also my mentor too, who has been a huge impact on our finances in our household for me and my wife. And it has been, I'm talking just sitting down looking at a spreadsheet made all the difference. And At times it hurt, but you need that though. And that's what I appreciate from this book and from Kim itself, because, a lot of people want things to be beat around the bush too bad, and nobody's giving it straight to the point. Everybody likes to sugarcoat something. I want to hear it straight. I don't want no BS. Even if it hurts, I'll eat it and then I'll implement it later. So
Love that. Love that mentality. Number 3, what is the most impactful thing, whether that be a piece of technology, a habit, or a person, that has helped in freeing up your time?
social media. Social media. I actually want to say indirectly, I guess you could say computers in general, because if you look at how individuals ran systems back then, it was more people, right? And it still is people in a sense, because people have to run a system at a certain point of that system. But if you have your computer systems in order where things are automatically sending out messages or automatically answering things, that right there is a time freedom. Now, if you do have that side, because we do still have people, we have VAs, but they free up tons of time. I mean, sitting on the phone and just cold calling is exhausting. And you're just cold calling over and over and over again. Even though we have systems that can make multiple dials, it still takes a lot of your time. So I would say a mix between the systems and the people is what actually frees up a lot of the time there, which I appreciate that. Just for technology, how far it's come so far anyway.
That's great. Number 4, what is your number one piece of advice you would give to anyone looking to achieve more control over their time?
I would say, one, don't be like a junkie to the information out here, because there's so much conflicting information on the internet, because I was that guy. And find someone that you enjoy watching and stick with their information, because everything works. Everything works. You just got to stick with somebody and continue to go that route. Now, I'll still watch a couple people to get different opinions, and I don't like to stay too one-sided, but make sure that you kind of keep your focus. And the other thing I would say is, if you have a void, like if you have a personal void that you deal with, figure out how to fill that void. Because if you don't fill that void, it's going to be very difficult for you to get in the right mindset to go after what you want to go after. And yes, as cliche as it sounds, it's all about the mindset, but it's not a lie. Because if you got some trauma in your past that you haven't dealt with, and you're carrying that over to what you're doing in the business side, you're not going to last long. It's not going to last. So make sure you fill that void.
That's great. So it's funny you mentioned that. I actually hired a business coach for the first 6 months of this journey. And one of the things that I did was realize that, where you want to go and where you currently are, there's an arrow there, right? But the problem is your mindset has to also be in alignment with where you want to go. And if you are in misalignment, you're going to be experiencing things like resistance to taking action, feelings of uncertainty, doubting yourself, just overall lack of inspiration to continue going and moving forward if you don't have that mindset in alignment with your goals. And as you're saying too, if people have a personal void, whether that be something from their past or their history, make sure that you address that, because as you were saying, the more barriers that you have in front of you that are internal, the more difficult it's going to be to achieve what it is you want to achieve when it comes to your life in general. That's really powerful. The 5th and final question here is, what is the best way for our listeners to get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can reach out to me on Instagram. If you go on IG and type in Real Estate with Ray, you'll be able to find me there. It's 2 Y's at the end, but I'll pop up if you just type in Real Estate with Ray. Also, my YouTube channel, Real Estate with Ray, where I actually give the journey of what I've been through in real estate, everything from the physical aspect, the mental aspect, and kind of give you tips on going out throughout this business. And we have content coming out soon. I've been recording videos. I have a VA that's doing the editing, because I could do the editing, but I'm strategically lazy. So I shoot the videos. I send it over to him to record. We're looking to launch tons of content per month. So you can find me on those 2 social media platforms there.
Love it. Make sure to check Ray out, guys, if you haven't already. And Ray, Tons of great information today, man. I really liked how you talked about your transition from becoming an engineer to now becoming a real estate investor, the different strategies that you underwent in going throughout your journey, as well as what you were doing to make sure that you are freeing up your time in doing so, whether that be systems or people that you end up partnering with. So I just want to thank you again for being a fantastic guest here, and I really look forward to remaining in touch.
No, thanks, Kris, for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Now, if you like this show and want to learn more about how we can help you free up your time through passive real estate investments, check out www.freedominvesting.com. Make sure to subscribe to our monthly newsletter and schedule an introductory call with our team. We also have a free 7-day course on what passive real estate investing is and how to get started so that you can start your journey towards earning back more time in your life. To all of our amazing listeners here on the Freedom Investing Podcast, my name is Kris Toribio. Till next time.